My name is Sara Nolan, and I was 29 years old when I won $500,000 on a Thursday evening lottery draw and discovered in the 48 hours that followed that not a single member of my immediate family was capable of saying the word congratulations before the word selfish. I want to tell you about the winning first, because the winning matters, and because it tends to get lost in the story of what came after it, and I do not want it to get lost. I bought the ticket on a Thursday at the petrol station 2 minutes from my flat, the same station I stopped at every Thursday on the way home from work, the same weekly ticket I had been buying since I was 23, a habit that cost me £4 a week and that my brother Daniel had called a waste of money at least a dozen times across the years. I checked the numbers on Friday morning over breakfast before I left for work, and I want to tell you what it felt like to look at those numbers and understand what they meant. It felt like the floor had dropped away, not in a frightening way, in the way that something you have imagined so many times it has become abstract suddenly becomes real, and your brain takes a moment to catch up with the fact that the abstract thing has arrived. I sat at my kitchen table for 4 minutes without moving. Then I checked the numbers again. Then I checked them a third time on the official website on my phone. Then I said out loud to my empty kitchen, "That is correct." I called the lottery claim line. I made an appointment. I went to work because I did not know what else to do with my body while my brain was processing something that large. Before I tell you what my family said, please hit like and subscribe. Drop your city and the time in the comments. I love knowing where you are when you listen to this. Now, let me tell you about the phone call. Daniel called on Saturday morning at 9:47. I know the exact time because I had been awake since 7 thinking about who to tell and how and in what order, and whether to tell anyone at all before the claim was formally processed, which the lottery company had advised me to consider carefully for security reasons. I had not yet told my mother. I had not told anyone except my best friend Priya, who had screamed for approximately 30 seconds and then said, "Sara, do not tell your brother yet," and whose instinct I should have trusted more completely than I did. Daniel called at 9:47, and I answered because he was my brother, and I had not yet developed the specific caution that the next 48 hours were going to teach me. He said, "Mum told me." I said, "I only told her an hour ago." He said, "She called me straight away, you know how she is." He said, "Sara, this is incredible." He said, "I am so happy for you." I want to be honest about this moment because it is important. In those first 30 seconds, Daniel sounded genuinely happy, warm, the brother I had grown up with, the one who had driven me to job interviews and lent me money when I was 22, and once spent an entire Saturday helping me move a flat's worth of furniture. That brother was present in those first 30 seconds. And then he said, "So what is the plan?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "For the money. How are you going to split it?" I said, "Split it how?" He said, "With the family, Sara. That is what you do when something like this happens. You take care of your people." I said, "Daniel, it is my lottery ticket." He said, "It is a family windfall." I said, "I bought the ticket." He said, "With family money." I said, "With my salary, from my job." He said, "Sara, do not be like this. Do not be the person who wins something and forgets where she came from." That was the sentence that ended the warmth. Do not be the person, as if winning a lottery and keeping the winnings was a character failing rather than a completely normal and legal response to having your name on a winning ticket. By Sunday, I had received 4 phone calls. Daniel twice, my mother once, and my Aunt Christine, who opened her call with, "Sara, I've been thinking about what's right here," which is the sentence of a person who has decided what's right and is presenting their conclusion as a process. My mother said that she was not asking for anything for herself, but that she thought about how much Daniel was struggling and how a portion of the money could make such a difference to his life, and that she hoped I would think about what family meant. My Aunt Christine said that luck was not meant to be hoarded, and that I had always been the fortunate one, and that fortune carried responsibility. I listened to all 4 calls with the same careful, neutral attention, and I said the same thing to all of them, which was that I was still processing everything and had not made any decisions. What I did not say was that I spent Saturday evening going through an old box of documents at the back of my wardrobe, not for any reason connected to the lottery win, but because the lottery win had made me think about money, and money had made me think about my grandmother, and thinking about my grandmother had made me remember something I had been meaning to look into for 3 years and had kept not looking into because looking into it required a confrontation I had not been ready for. My grandmother, Edna Nolan, had died 3 years ago. She had left an estate valued at approximately £90,000, split equally between her 4 grandchildren, which meant each of us should have received approximately £22,500. Daniel had handled the paperwork because he was the oldest grandchild and because he had positioned himself as the responsible one when it came to family administrative matters. My share arrived. It was £14,000, not $22,500, $14,000. Daniel had told me at the time that there had been estate costs and legal fees that had reduced the final distributions. I had accepted that because I trusted him, and because I did not know enough about estate administration to question it, and because he was my brother. Saturday evening, I started looking at the numbers properly. I called Priya at 10 on Saturday night. She was the only person I trusted completely in this situation. And she had the particular quality of a friend who tells you the truth even when the truth is complicated. I told her about the numbers, about my grandmother's estate, about the 14,000 instead of 22,500, about Daniel handling the paperwork, about the 3 years of not questioning it. She was quiet for a moment, and then she said, "Sarah, do you have any of the estate documents?" I said, "I have some of them, the ones that were sent to me directly." She said, "Is there a final estate account?" I said, "Daniel sent me a summary letter, but not a full account." She said, "Did you ever ask for the full account?" I said, "No." She said, "Ask for it now." I said, "If I ask for it now, he's going to know I'm looking at the numbers." She said, "Sarah, he has spent the last 2 days calling you selfish for not splitting £500,000 when he may have taken £8,500 of your grandmother's money 3 years ago and said nothing." I said, "I know." She said, "Ask for the full account." I called Daniel on Sunday morning before he could call me again. He answered immediately, which meant he had been waiting. I said, "Daniel, I've been thinking about Grandma's estate." He said, "What about it?" I said, "I would like to see the full estate account, not the summary, the full itemized account with all costs listed." There was a pause. Not long, 2 seconds, but present. The specific quality of a pause that contains a calculation. He said, "I would have to dig that out." I said, "Whenever you can find it." I said it pleasantly, without accusation, the way I said things when I needed information and did not want the person with the information to understand why I needed it. He said, "Yeah, sure." He said, "Can we talk about the lottery first?" I said, "Let us sort the estate account first." He said, "Sarah." I said, "Daniel." He did not call back that day. I contacted a solicitor on Monday morning, not to take legal action immediately, but to understand my position, which is what I always do when I'm in a situation where I don't fully know my rights. The solicitor, a man named Graham Ellis, who specialized in estate disputes, told me that as a beneficiary of my grandmother's estate, I had the right to request a full accounting of all estate transactions, and that the executor, which Daniel had been, was legally obligated to provide one. He told me that a shortfall of £8,500 without documented justification would constitute a serious irregularity. He told me that estate records were kept and that if Daniel had moved money, it would be traceable. I said, "What do I do?" He said, "Send a formal written request for the full estate account. Give him 14 days to respond." I sent the letter through Graham's office that afternoon. Daniel received it on Tuesday. He called me 4 times on Tuesday. I did not answer. He called my mother. My mother called me and said, "Sarah, what are you doing? You're tearing this family apart. Daniel is devastated." I said, "Mom, I'm requesting documents I'm legally entitled to as a beneficiary of Grandma's estate." She said, "Why now? Right now?" I said, "Because right now is when I looked at the numbers." She said, "This is about the lottery." I said, "This is about £8,500 that I may have never received and 3 years of not knowing to ask about it." She was quiet. I said, "Mom, Daniel called me selfish for not splitting £500,000 that I won with my own ticket. Before he calls me selfish again, I would like to know whether he split everything correctly when he was the one in charge." She did not have an answer for that. Daniel provided the full estate account 11 days later through his own solicitor, which told me everything I needed to know about what was in it before I opened it. The shortfall was documented. Graham is handling it. The lottery money is in an account in my name only, and it's going to stay there while this is resolved, and probably after it is resolved, and possibly forever, because I've learned something in the last 3 weeks that I did not know before, which is that the people who call you selfish the loudest are very often the people who have the most to answer for. That's my story. If it stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop your city in the comments. Hit subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.